Decorating, especially wallpapering, looks a complicated task, but this couldn't be further from the truth. Wall coverings give a simple, easy-to-use, effective decoration to any room in the home, providing a solution to colour, style and theming with products to suit every budget. Developments in technology have provided a range of easy-to-use wall coverings to suit all environments and tastes. Traditional wallpapers for any living area around the home. Vinyls for areas subject to humidity, such as bathrooms and kitchens. Embossed and blown vinyls for overpainting and uneven walls. And textiles such as phlox and hessians to create a completely different mood. Also, specially developed wall coverings to make it even easier to decorate, such as Paste the Wall. There is a product to meet all aspirations and tastes. Wall coverings can be used in every room for all-around colour and design, to complement painted walls to good effect, and as feature walls, which provide a focal point in any room. An extensive range of adhesives, along with a great range of easy-to-use affordable tools, makes the task of wallpapering so much easier, allowing most of us to enjoy and undertake wallpapering projects around the home with ease. This DVD will give you an insight into successful wallpapering and provide you with the skills and knowledge to create a fabulous new colour scheme to any room in your home. The first task after selecting the design, colour and type of wall covering for the room you're decorating is to calculate the number of rolls you will require. This is done by measuring the height and widths of the wall or walls you're intending to paper. Most wallpapers are 10.05 meters in length and 500 millimeters wide. Divide the total length of your selected wall covering by the ceiling height, and this will calculate how many drops you will get per roll. If you're using a patterned paper, you will also need to allow for the pattern match in your calculations. As a rough guide, most modern homes built since the mid-1900s have a ceiling height of 2.4 meters. If this is the case, then you will achieve 4 drops per roll for plain papers and 3 drops per roll if you have a design with a pattern match. When purchasing your wall covering, check that the batch numbers on each roll are the same, as colours can vary between each batch. You will also need a small number of tools. To help, a list is provided at the end of the DVD. Plus, of course, the paste for the job, which is also covered later on. It's useful to have a tool belt or apron with large pockets in which to keep your hanging brush, tape measure, scissors, etc. The very first thing to do is to lay down dust sheets to protect the flooring and carpets. The key thing when wallpapering is to have a smooth, sound surface on which to hang your new wall covering. Remove any fixtures such as lampshades, shelves, and loosen electrical fittings after turning off the electrical supply at the mains, and remove any radiators after draining down. If the wall you're intending decorating has a wall covering already on it, then it will need to be removed prior to redecorating. Depending on the existing wall covering, there are several different ways in which it can be removed. For standard wallpaper, it is best to use Solvite Active Wallpaper Stripper. Apply to the wallpaper, allowing it to soak in first, and this will help break down the adhesive and make scraping the wall covering off with a wallpaper stripping knife easier. Another method is to use a steam stripper, although it's important to take care when using one to avoid scalding yourself. Whichever method you're using, it is best to score the surface of the wall covering with a paper tiger. This will allow the Solvite Active Stripper to soak in and take effect much quicker. If you're stripping vinyl wall covering, then if you carefully peel back the surface at one corner, the complete facing layer can easily be removed. This will leave the backing paper, which can be removed as described earlier with a stripping knife, after soaking the paper with Solvite Active Wallpaper Stripper, or using a steam stripper. We would recommend that you wear safety goggles when stripping the wall covering, to avoid getting small particles of paper or dust in your eyes. Once stripped, check that the wall has no loose or blown plaster. This is where the plaster has come loose, and any such areas will need replastering before papering. Any small holes or cracks should be filled with Unibond filler, left to dry, and then sanded down with a very fine abrasive paper. If the surface is uneven, then it is best to line the walls using lining paper. Lining paper should be applied horizontally, not vertically, which is called cross-lining. By doing this, it means that none of your joints will fall in the same position as your wall covering. If you apply lining paper, or the surface you're applying your wall covering to has not had wallpaper on it previously, or is newly plastered, it is best to apply a coat of Solvite size prior to hanging the wall covering. Walls previously painted with gloss paint should be sanded down with medium-grade sandpaper to give the surface a key before hanging a wall covering. Before you start hanging the wall covering, all the other decoration in the room should be completed first, sanding down the wood or metalwork, painting the ceiling, undercoating the wood or metalwork, painting any other walls, and applying the gloss or eggshell paint to the woodwork. If hanging a wall covering that requires emulsion painting, then for best results, undercoat the wood and metalwork, hang the paper, paint the ceiling, then the walls, before applying the top coat to wood and metalwork. Once the area is prepared, you are ready to start marking out. Time spent at this stage will make your wall covering look aesthetically better. Centre the paper if you are just papering one wall. Mark where the joints will fall, making sure that if you're papering into or around a corner, it will be cut at every corner, as using them as a starting point or papering around them is unwise. They are invariably not straight or square. Once you are happy with the layout, mark a vertical line on the wall along the edge of the first drop. This gives a vertical line to start from. Always paper back into a corner from the vertical line. Think about the time of day that you start. If you are going to have to work in close proximity to electrical fittings or switches, the power will need to be turned off whilst cutting around these areas, so you will be reliant on natural light for some of the time. Now you are ready to start hanging your chosen wall covering. Using the right paste will make the job that much easier, and there are a range of adhesives to choose from. Choose the adhesive that best suits the wall covering you are hanging and the area in which the wall covering will be hung. All the wall coverings contain a fungicide to protect the adhesive against mold growth whilst they dry. It is important to keep adhesives well away from children and pets at all times. Solvite Extra Strong All-Purpose Adhesive. Ideal for hanging most wallpapers. Mixes in 20 seconds. Solvite Ready-to-Use Wallpaper Adhesive. Ideal for hanging most wallpapers. Added polymers for improved adhesion. No mixing or dilution required. Solvite Paste the Wall Adhesive. For most paste the wall wallpapers. Less mess, less effort, less time. Ready to use in under 2 minutes. Solvite Super High Performance Ready Mixed Wall Covering Adhesive. Water-based ready mixed adhesive. Added polymers for extra strength. Solvite Light Grade Ready Mixed Wall Covering Adhesive. For high quality and hand-printed wall coverings. Helps prevent damage to more delicate wall coverings. No mixing or dilution required. Solvite Kitchen and Bathroom Ready Mixed Wall Coverings Adhesive. For much higher than normal temperature and humidity areas. Ideal for tile-on-a-roll wallpapers. Solvite Feature Wall Ready Mixed Wall Coverings Adhesive. For luxury and hand-printed wall coverings. Ready mixed light grade. Contains a non-staining formula. Solvite Border, Overlap and Repair Adhesives. Water-based ready-mixed adhesives. Hangs decorative borders onto wall coverings, including vinyl. Adheres wallpaper overlap seams. Repairs damaged wall coverings. Each type of paste or adhesive will hang a specific number of rolls. Please refer to individual packs for further details. If you have selected a ready-mixed adhesive, then of course you are ready to start straight away. However, if you are using a flake adhesive, then it will need to be mixed with the appropriate amount of water in a bucket according to the manufacturer's instructions. Now to hanging the wall covering. First, just double check that all the batch numbers are the same on each roll. Then, as mentioned earlier, if your walls are slightly uneven, it is best to cross-line with lining paper. To cross-line, first measure the horizontal lengths required, allowing around 50 mm for trimming at each end. Measure and cut the lining paper with a pair of wall covering scissors. Before hanging, mark a horizontal line at the top of the wall where the first drop will be hung. This allows for trimming under the coving or ceiling join, as they are not likely to be exactly horizontal. Place the paper on your paste table, making sure that one edge and one end is on the edge and end of the table. This avoids getting paste on the surface of your table. Apply the paste evenly, brushing out with your paste brush as you go. Move the paper across to the other side and end, repeating the process for the rest of this strip. Fold the paper as you paste in a concertina way. This will make it easier to hold when applying to the wall. Let the paste soak in for the prescribed amount as indicated on the label with each roll of the wallpaper. Using step ladders, start to hang the wall covering from one end of the wall, lining it up with the horizontal line you have drawn along the wall. Once you have positioned the end, start to unfold the paper, a small amount at a time, using your hand to first position the paper along the horizontal line or edge of the previous strip. Brush to smooth it out and remove any air bubbles. Carry on this process until the complete strip has been applied and brushed out. Trim the ends as soon as you have hung each strip. With lining paper, it is best to use a pencil to mark a line for cutting. Once marked, peel back the wallpaper and cut along the pencil line with wallpaper shears, brushing the lining paper back into position. Repeat the process along the cornice or ceiling joint. Carry on cutting and hanging the lining paper until you have finished the complete area. Leave a 1 mm gap between the rows of paper rather than butt jointing. Joint overlapping will cause bumps in the wall covering when hung. This will also allow the lining paper to expand slightly when it is re-wet by the paste on the wallpaper. If you are using lining paper, allow it to dry completely, ideally overnight, before hanging your selected wall covering. Now you have a perfect surface for wallpapering onto. Now to hanging your chosen wall covering. You will first need to decide where you're going to start from. Always start at the light source, for example a window, and work away from the light. Once the starting point has been determined, measure the widths of wallpaper across the area to see if you'll be left with a very small strip. It is best to have a cut at both ends and have your paper centered, particularly in the main feature wall of the room. Mark in pencil a vertical line at the edge of where the first strip of wall covering is going to go. If you're starting from a corner, always run a vertical line to go by, as corners are invariably not square. Use a long spirit level, or just as good is a plumb line to mark a vertical line. Cut your first length after measuring the drop from coving or ceiling to the bottom, again allowing about 50 mm or 2 inches extra at both ends for trimming. Once cut, lay it onto your paste table as illustrated with lining paper, one end and one edge flush with the edges of your paste table. Paste the paper with a liberal coating of paste, brushing out to avoid large deposits. Move the paper to the other side of your paste table and paste the other edge. Fold the pasted sides together as you go along. This will make it easier to manage when you are hanging it on the wall, and stops the paste drying out whilst the paper soaks for the prescribed time. It is advisable to wipe over the paste table regularly during hanging to remove any small deposits of paste. Using stepladders, start hanging the wallpaper from the ceiling downwards. Whilst lining up at the top and vertical line or join, it's best to keep as much of the paper away from the wall as possible, either left folded or held away, as it makes it easier to move into position. As you move down, make sure that the first drop is vertical, checking against your pencil line, unfolding the paper as you move down the wall. Use your wallpaper hanging brush to brush out the wall covering, removing any air bubbles and securing the paper to the wall. Once hung, you are now ready to trim the wall covering at the top and bottom. Run the back of your scissors along the edge. This will leave a crease on the back and front of the paper, which can be clearly seen. Use your wallpaper shears to cut along the crease to give you a perfect fit. It's an idea to keep things tidy, to fold the excess piece pasted side to pasted side. Once cut, use your hanging brush to push the paper back against the wall, brushing out any air bubbles. If you are hanging paper on a straight wall, continue hanging strips. However, if, as shown, you are papering along a wall with a chimney breast, you will encounter both internal and external corners. It is very important to keep your wall covering vertical, and as corners are invariably out of true, each corner joint needs to be cut and overlapped before marking a new vertical line to work from. After cutting to length, measure the width of the strip left on the chimney face. Mark this on the cut length. Use a spirit level or straight edge to draw a line to cut to along its length. Using your shears, cut along the line before hanging the strip to the wall. Once cut and pasted, hang the paper, checking that the pattern matches as you go. Cut the top and bottom with your shears and then push the paper around the external corner, giving you an overlap of about 10 millimeters. To keep your wall covering perfectly vertical, measure the width of the remaining strip and transfer this measurement to the wall. Using a spirit level, draw a vertical line on the wall to paper from. Hang the paper to this line, trim and brush out. The next length will go around the internal corner. Measure the remaining width into the corner and allow 10 millimeters for the overlap. Transfer this measurement to the next drop and cut as before. Hang this strip into and around the internal corner. To keep the paper vertical, a new line will need to be drawn. Measure the width of the strip remaining and transfer this measurement to the wall. Draw a vertical line using a spirit level to work from. Hang the remaining piece, checking that its edge is running along the vertical line and that the pattern matches as best as possible. As you are overlapping the paper, it will not be perfect, but being in the corner, it will not be highly visible. Trim and brush back into place as before. Now continue hanging along the wall. The same principle should be followed whenever you're papering around an internal corner. Always start off with a vertical strip and always overlap and trim the paper in the corner. Make sure that the wall covering is not curling up at the edges. If there are any signs of this, run your pasting brush down the edge and brush firmly back into place. A seam roller is a good tool to use if you're hanging smooth papers, but should not be used for textured and embossed types. Remove any excess paste from the face of the paper with a damp sponge or cloth immediately. If you have started from a corner or are just papering along one flat feature wall, you will still need a vertical line to start from. Mark the vertical line on the wall 10 millimeters less than the width of your paper away from the corner. After pasting and soaking for the required time, hang the paper from your vertical line back into the corner. Trim the top and bottom before starting the vertical trimming, as you will find it easier. Run the back of your shears down the join as with the top and bottom, and then either cut using the crease on the front or peel back the wallpaper and use the back, whichever is more comfortable for you to do. Push back into place using your hanging brush. If you are using a plain paper, it's advisable to reverse hang to avoid edge-to-edge shading. This simply means reverse alternate lengths before hanging. If you are using a patterned paper, it will have a pattern match. This is where the pattern matches on each strip. This varies depending upon the design you have chosen, but can be clearly seen when you offer up the next drop. Measure as before, but in the case of pattern paper, allow extra for the pattern match. Cut and paste. After soaking, follow the same procedure to hang the wall covering, starting at the top and working down. In the case of pattern paper, make sure that the match is accurate at the top before moving down the strip. Brush out, removing any bubbles as you go by brushing to the edge or end of the wall covering. Trim at the top and bottom as before. Brush the ends back into place before moving on. If you have any light switches or plug sockets to cut around, the socket or switch cover will need to be loosened from its backing plate. This must only be done with the power switched off. Hang the strip from the top as normal, down and over the switch or socket. Mark the four corners of the switch or socket with either your shears or a pencil. Then make a hole in the center. Cut a line out to each corner from this center hole. Push the paper back around the switch or socket and back into position. Then trim the paper on all four sides, leaving about a 5 mm overlap on each edge. Push this overlap back gently behind the cover plate with your hanging brush. Once complete, the socket or switch can be tightened back into position and the power turned back on again. If you have a door frame or flush window to cut around, cut the length of wall covering in the normal way. Apply the wall covering from the top, checking the pattern matches and the join is okay. The next step is to cut an angled cut with your shears into the corner of the top of the door frame. This will allow you to push the paper back down the vertical edge and along the top without ripping the wallpaper. Trim the vertical edge first, using the back of your scissors. Peel back the paper and cut along the line. Brush back into place with your hanging brush. Trim the bottom and then you are ready to move to the top of the frame. Brush the paper into position and then repeat the cutting process for the top of the door frame and your paper will fit perfectly. If you have a recessed window, paper up to the last full width before the recess. It is important to check the positioning of the drops along a window wall to ensure that the drops on both sides overlap sufficiently to cut and fold back into the vertical surfaces of the recess. Hang the first drop and then carefully cut along the top horizontal of the recess. Fold the paper back into the recess, brushing out as you go. Then mark a line with the back of your shears down the vertical edge and cut to size. Finish by trimming the bottom in the same way. Push back into place with your hanging brush, removing any air bubbles. Continue papering along the recess until you finish. Finally, cut a strip to fit into the top vertical area of the recess, allowing about 5 mm to overlap on the outside edge and for trimming at the window's edge. Remember, if you're using a pattern paper, to match it. Lift the existing paper on the top of the recess and place the strip you have just pasted underneath it, brushing it back with your brush into the recess. Trim as needed at the back on the window edge with your shears. And then smooth down the front area so you minimize the appearance of the join along the top. If you have chosen a blown vinyl or lining paper to cover up slightly uneven surfaces to overpaint, then you should follow the same process for hanging and then leave to dry overnight. After drying, the paper can be painted with your selected color and type of paint. If your paper is of the paste the wall type, then the only difference is to apply the paste to the wall rather than the back of the paper, and then proceed to hang in exactly the same way. This only applies to paste the wall papers. Having a border between wall coverings allows you the opportunity to create a different mood and style to your room. If you're going to use two different papers, one at the top and a different one below, you will need to firstly decide the height at which you wish to have the border. Mark the wall with a pencil at the height of the top of the border, and then run a horizontal line along the wall to show the top position. Take the border and mark the bottom line along the wall, and using your level, draw a horizontal line. Measure the center point between the two lines and again draw a horizontal line. This gives you the point at which the paper will need to join. Then, with a spirit level, mark a horizontal line for the center point along all the surfaces you are going to paper. Hang the paper in the top section first. Measure the drop above the line where the border is going to be positioned first. Cut, paste and fold in the same way as described earlier for full-length drops of paper, allowing your paper time to soak as indicated on the instructions, and then hang the strip, brushing out and trimming at the ceiling and the center horizontal line where the border is going to be hung. Hang all the lengths above the border before moving on to those below. Remember that if you're using a patterned paper, to allow for the pattern match with each drop. Measure from the bottom of the strips you have already hung to the skirting board. Cut, paste and hang the paper for the bottom section. Trimming along the bottom and center line, ensuring the papers do not overlap. A 1 or 2 millimeter gap is best. Once complete, you can hang your border using specialist border adhesive, which can also be used to stick vinyl paper at joins when it is overlapped. Now for the border. Measure the width on the wall. Cut a strip of border, allowing an extra 25 millimeters each end for trimming. Also measure and mark with a light pencil line a horizontal line to use as a guide to where the top of the border should go. This will help you in hanging the border level. Paste, and then concertina fold in small sections to make it much easier to handle. Start hanging from one end, brushing out as you go, making sure you are level with the horizontal line drawn on the wall in pencil. Once complete, trim the normal way, running the back of your wallpaper scissors down the corner, which will leave a crease on the back and front. Peel it back carefully and trim the border to the exact length, cutting along the crease. Using your hanging brush, push the border back against the paper, brushing out any air bubbles. Once finished, cleaning is easy too. All the products are water washable, so a quick rinse under or in warm water and they're ready to store until the next decorating project. If your wallpaper should get damaged, it may be possible to repair it with Solvite overlap and border adhesive. Apply the adhesive to the wall and the damaged piece of paper. Leave it until the paper has softened and then carefully push back into place with a wallpaper hanging brush. Remove any excess paste with a sponge. Wallpapering is a relatively easy decorating task that most can enjoy and participate in, bringing quick solutions to decoration. The extensive range of materials and designs means that most discerning tastes can be catered for. Create a new style and theme to any room in the home, or a stunning feature wall. Whatever your taste, there is a wall covering design and product for your home.